So, when we thought about starting L2E, the new career conference, and we created the theme of discovering your strengths, learning how to tell your story, and create your own personal brand, and embracing social media, I have to admit that the first person that came to my mind that I said, we have to have this person come and speak, is a very close friend of mine, Mr. Chris Smith. Whew, look at that guy. How could you not want this guy up here? This sweet little daughter, Ivy. Chris Smith is a fifth-generation native to Arizona. He's a cowboy. He's a family man. And if you want to understand how to tell your story and how to create your personal brand using your strengths, Chris is the man. I want to welcome him with some serious oomph. Let's hear it for Mr. Chris Smith. Get up here, buddy.
Is this my...
Enjoy.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I am so thankful to be here. I want to say thank you to the LDS Business College for having me. Thank you to Spence. Thank you to my host, Jesse. Thank you for the wonderful people here running the audio visual that have made this happen, the student volunteers. So I love coming and sharing. I love anytime I have the opportunity to talk about strengths. I loved Paul. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I want to use a lot of what Paul had to say, and I'll touch on that. So we have a company called K-Cross, and we're a brand alignment consultancy, is what K-Cross is known as. So here's a little bit of my information if you'd like to connect with me. You can take down any of this information. I've had several people say, hey, being that you have the name Chris Smith, you're a little hard to find on LinkedIn. And I said, I've never heard that before in my life. It was a nightmare having the name Chris Smith when you were little. I'd show up to the library or Blockbuster, and if I'd forgot my card, they'd always say, oh, no worries, we'll just look you up in the system. And I'd be like, oh, okay. They'd say, what's your name? And I would say, Chris Smith. And they would say, no, seriously, what's your name? There's 10 million Chris Smiths in our system. I said, no, really, that's my name. So after 10 minutes of waiting, they'd finally say, you know what, just take the movie or the book, just bring it back tomorrow. They wouldn't even try. So this is my info. Want you guys hashtagging L2E. My LinkedIn is actually linkedin.com/IN/Christopher Carter Smith. I'd love to connect with you guys on LinkedIn. So that's the easiest way to find me. So my talk today is on leveraging your strengths, telling your story, and building your brand. So as Spence said, I'm a fifth-generation native of Arizona. I grew up in a ranching rodeo family. I still compete in rodeo to this day. I love it. This is kind of heaven for me, being on a horse out. It's a little bit unique. I always thought I'd kind of ranch and cowboy most of my life, but I kind of fell into storytelling, being around cowboy storytellers my entire life, and I realized that I had a passion for helping other people tell their story and helping organizations tell their story. So these are my boys, Tate and Tanner. They're starting to learn the cowboy way of life. They kind of grown up on horses, and they love it. This is my beautiful wife, Melissa, and my little girl, Ivy. So that's not the best picture of Ivy as far as getting a picture of her face, but it is the best picture because she fell asleep on that horse. Because every time I try to get her off, it's like World War III trying to get her off a horse. She is horse crazy, so she fell asleep riding with my wife. So I have to tell you, it was really funny. My wife and I were talking the other morning at breakfast at our little kitchen bar, and my wife said, now you're going to speak at the LDS Business College, right? And I said, yeah. She said, well, just be really careful what you say. And I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, just be careful what you say. And she walks off. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay. I was like, I think I'm a good guy. I don't think I'm going to say anything bad. Last night I get into the town. Spence is a great friend. I wanted to see his office, so I go up to his office. We sit down. Spence says, hey, so excited to have you here. Man, you got to be really careful what you say. I'm like, is there something that I don't know about myself? Like, do I need to be careful? I will say that when I was growing up, we'd go out and work on the ranch. I thought that the only way to work cattle and livestock, I thought the only language they understood was curse words. So I I may or may not know anything about that, but there is probably something about that in the ranching way of life. But I promise today we're going to keep it on the up and up. And I'm grateful to be here, like I said, share some thoughts. This is the man that started everything in my life. It's hard for me to talk about him every time without getting emotional. This is my great-grandfather, Jack Gable, who gave me this bolo tie before he passed away. He always wore a Navajo turquoise Indian watch band that I wear to this day, every day. And this man had such an impact on my life. And he's the one that started the K-Cross brand. He registered it in the state of Arizona in 1950 as a cattle brand. I'm fortunate enough to have that brand passed on to me and my family, and I will pass that brand on to my boys someday. So when I started my company, I thought, what greater brand to have for my company and my story than our actual family cattle brand? And so that's the name of my company, is K-Cross. And so my goal is to live that legacy and never forget where I came from, and always remember my story of what made me great and what made my great-grandfather such a great man. He was an entrepreneur. He was a small business owner. He was a very inspirational individual. And my great-grandfather is the exact type of people that I want to work with. He was an enlightened person. He was an enlightened leader. And you can go on our website and you'll see when we talk about who we want to work with, we want to work with enlightened leaders. We want to work with enlightened organizations. We want to work with enlightened individuals such as yourselves that believe in the strengths movement, that believe that telling your story is powerful. I've seen the power of story and living within your strengths and being intentional about your brand. I've seen it change hundreds of companies, hundreds of people. And the one thing I want to tell you that I absolutely know is truth is I know that every one of you has an amazing story. Every one of you has the opportunity to create an amazing brand that will inspire people to want you to come work for their organization, that will inspire you to start your own organization. But I think sometimes, because of what the world teaches us, that story has been suppressed, and we almost don't know that we have an amazing story. And so my goal here today is to help you be free. I believe in everything Paul said. In fact, we use Strength Finders in our brand and brand alignment consultancy all the time with our clients. But I feel that in order for you to really understand your strengths, in order for you to really apply them into your story, you have to be free to do that, right? I think it's one thing to understand your strengths, but I think it's another thing to be free enough to actually believe in them, to believe that you have greatness within you. And so by the end of the day, I want all of you to be thinking to yourself, I'm free to be me. I'm free to seek out and understand my talents and work at them to develop them into strengths. I'm free to tell my story, my authentic story. Not the story that I think the world wants me to tell, but the story that I want to tell the world, right? And let me tell you this, you don't have to ask anyone in this world for permission for anything. Just give them notice that you're coming, right? Tell your story. So this next clip I'm going to show you is about a gentleman named Tommy Franklin. Now, I found Tommy Franklin one night online on YouTube on Australia's Got Talent. I don't know, how many of you have heard the Tommy Franklin story? Not many. That's usually the response I get. Tommy inspired me at a time in my life when I really needed it. Because I looked at Tommy and I said, I wish I was that free. I wish I was that free to live with my God-given talents and be who I really am and tell my real story. So Tommy was bullied a lot as a child, became suicidal, fell into the trap of drugs and alcohol, was riding his skateboard one day, got hit by a car, and that kind of set his life on a course of events that changed his life forever. As he was rehabilitating from his injury, and he was trying to kick this habit that he had gotten into of substance abuse, one night at a youth church, at a youth group, he said he went to the back of this church all alone and he danced in the back of this church. And he said as he began to dance, he became light and freed, like a freedom he'd never felt before. And he said, I danced out all of my hatred and my anger and my rage and all of the false things that had been taught to me about what's wrong with me that night. And he said, dancing really, it frees my soul. I feel so much joy when I dance. So I want you guys, if you would be willing, when you go home, YouTube Tommy Franklin audition, and then also YouTube his documentary. They created a documentary about him. It was so impactful what he did. And it's called Free to Be Me. And so as you watch this clip, I want you to kind of get the reaction of the fans and the audience at the beginning, and then we'll see how that changes towards the end.
Come by.
That's his parents in the audience. So people think that's the end of the dance, but oh no. Here comes the bill. How can you not want to dance right now? You know what I mean? All right, be honest with me. What did some of you think at the very beginning of that clip when people were kind of like, oh my goodness, I'm embarrassed for this guy? Any of you have a similar feeling? What did you think about Tommy towards the end of the video? What was that? Awesome what? No fear? Awesome beard. Okay, I do not want you guys growing beards, growing out your hair or your eyebrows as a result of that. That's not my purpose. At the beginning of his audition, people are kind of making fun of him, even before he goes on stage. People watching him in the warm-up area. And they're kind of looking like this guy's a nut job. And even the judges at first are kind of like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a waste of our time. At the end, everyone's dancing. The judges are dancing, everyone's smiling. And they tell Tommy, they say, you have a beautiful gift, and that is you have a gift to make people smile. In his documentary, he says, I want to change the world one smile at a time. That's my purpose in life. I want to dance, and I want to change the world. And in that documentary, he says, you know what? I finally had to realize this. It's none of my business what other people think of me. A lot of times we think, well, it's none of my business what other people think. But he actually says, it's none of my business even what other people think of me. I'm free to be me. And in his documentary, he says, if you're out of your cage, flap your wings, right? And that inspired me to say, am I really free to be me? Have I sought out my gifts? Am I really living the life that I want to live and telling my story and building my brand? And so again, I hope by the end of today you can have a little bit of that feeling of that I'm free to be me. So it looks like we're having a little. So that's really part of the motives of. So to me, we're starting this movement called alignment. We say we're the brand alignment consultancy. I met a gentleman named Kyle Morgan, and he was using Gallup StrengthsFinder to create this course that he'd created called Alignment. And this idea of alignment is aligning everything in your life so that it can be one thing, and you can live within your strengths, you can do things you love, you can align with your service. But to me, alignment equals freedom. What do you often hear? What's the opposite of fear? Faith. Absolutely. I'm also starting to believe that the opposite of fear is freedom. When you're free, you're fearless. There's no fear from what other people are going to think of you or the outside world is trying to impress upon you. I look at Tommy Franklin and I see absolute freedom and I see that he's fearless, right? But there's a couple myths about strengths that I think we need to address as we start getting into this idea of alignment, telling your story and building your brand so that you feel free to do that. One of the myths about strengths that Marcus Buckingham teaches that I absolutely love and that Kyle really helped me further understand is that strengths aren't always things you're good at and weaknesses aren't always things you're bad at. It's not just that clear cut. Strengths are things that strengthen you and weaknesses are things that weaken you. Have any of you ever been good at something and didn't enjoy doing it? How can that be a strength? If you're really good at it, but you don't like doing it. Have any of you ever been not terribly great at something, but loved doing it? Really strengthens you, right? Well, the world will tell you, oh, if you're good at it, keep doing it. Well, I don't like it. That's okay. You're good at it. Keep doing it. And the world will also tell you, I'm not necessarily great at this, but I really love it and it really strengthens me. Well, if you're not good at it, stop doing it. That changed my life, that thought that strengths are things that strengthen me. So not only am I going to look and really discover my strengths, within those strengths, I want to participate in activities that most strengthen me. The other myth about strengths is that sometimes we think, well, we can change and adapt as we get older. As we get older, we'll become more of who we really want to be. As you become older, you become more of who you already are. That strengthens as you get older, right? So the time is now. Paul and I were talking at breakfast this morning. He said, I just barely found out about the Gallup Strengths Finder Assessment 2 years ago. And we share the same feeling that I wish I would have known this in my 20s. I wish someone would have helped me take the Strengths Finder assessment and really tell my story and build my brand. There's so many things I can look back on in my life and realize I would have done things differently. I would have parented differently. I would have had a different relationship with my wife that whole time. I would have had a different relationship in my business. So I want every one of you to get out a piece of paper or your phone. Now, in some presentations, I tell you to turn your phone off. I want all of your phones on, all of your mobile devices on. I want you to write down your definition of success, and I'll give you a minute to do it. How you define success. No right or wrong answer. I've realized that for me and from our clients we work with, that how they define success has so much to do with the ultimate paths that they go down in life. I can tell you that when I was in college, I really didn't have a definition of success. I hadn't been that intentional. And so what happened to me is I went out in the world gave me their definition of success, and I followed it. The world is really eager to give you their definition of success. But if we can define our own definition of success, see, my definition of success always used to have to do with something in the future, always something outside of me. Success was never in the present for me, and so I was always looking for new things because I thought that's where I would find success. And I kind of had a life-changing experience when I realized that success for me is a sustainable progression of a worthy ideal. It's not about having something, it's about becoming something and sustainably progressing towards that worthy ideal. So as you have your definition of success, a couple questions I want to ask you. And this isn't right or wrong. This is just for you to internalize and think about. Does your definition of success start with having something? So look at your definition of success. Does it start with having something or does it start with being something? Neither one of them is right or wrong. A lot of us by nature are born with one of these two tendencies. Now the second one is more critical. Does your definition of success have to do with the present? Meaning, can you live your definition of success right now, today, and be successful? Or does it happen in the future? And if it happens in the future, I want to help you understand how you can have that right now. It's not outside of you, that you can have that success right now in your life. So there's a little formula we've created called path, purpose, and rainbows. And I didn't include the rainbow part of this slide, but this includes, there's you in the middle, us, and every one of these paths is different paths that we can go down in life, different choices we have, right, to tell our story, build our brand. And so many times in life we think, if I can just get on this certain path, then I'm going to have success and be happy. And a lot of times in life we think it's about the path itself. But guess what you find at the end of every path you go down in life? You find you. You're at the end of every one of these paths, and the question is, when you find yourself, are you finding the you that went down that path because you thought that's where you'd find success or happiness? Or are you going down that path because at the end of it you find the real you that's living within their strengths and telling their story? So don't worry so much all the time about the path you go down, but really worry how you as a person align with the path that you want to go down in life. A lot of times we think that success is kind of like this rainbow, right? We're going to go get a job, and we're just going to have to grind and struggle and fight on the way up. And then eventually we hit this magical point in life where we've grinded and struggled and fought enough, and then we slide down into this pot of gold. And I hate to break it to you, but that's not how it works at all. Don't wait to grind and struggle your entire life to then slide down this pot of gold. Find out now how you align. and find out how you align with the path that you're going to go on and how you live within your strengths. So alignment, can anyone read that bottom tier? Personal. Why is that the smallest? Because we believe that you got to get small. Get really small and focus on you for a minute. Because if you get small, then you can go and serve big. But so many times in life, we're out there trying to serve in big ways and do things without taking the time to get small and really understand us. And the smaller you can get in focusing on you and understanding your strengths and your gifts and your story, the bigger you can serve. And if you become personally aligned, right, and you know your story and your strengths, the easier it is to then align with your profession and then align with the community you ultimately want to serve. But so many times in life, we start going out and trying to serve a community and impress people without really taking the time to understand who we are. And it's such a tendency of us, especially in this country, to always be doing things outside of us, to always be doing things that we can check off a list. So I would encourage everyone, how many of you have taken the StrengthsFinder assessment? Wow, that's incredible. An amazing start, right? That's part of this getting small, learning who you are, understanding not only your talents, but what strengthens you, what activities strengthen you. And I want you guys to start paying attention to this. Write it down. Pay attention to activities throughout your day and throughout your life that strengthen you, and pay attention to activities and things in your life that weaken you, right? So we have these God-given talents, but it's not enough just to know our talents. We have to claim those talents. Paul referenced the parable of the talents. If you guys look in the footnotes of the talents, in almost every footnote, there's an association to work. In most times where it has something to do with talents, if you look in a footnote, it'll also say work and the value of. It requires some work to claim your talents, and then work at those talents to develop them into strengths. See, initially, they're not strengths, they're talents that we have. It's our job to work and turn them into strengths. Anyone familiar with the scripture John 8:32 without looking on your phone? Can anyone cite John 8:32? Maybe I can give you one of Spence's things without his permission. Or I've got a granola bar in my pocket. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Spence, do you have anything extra up here that I can give away? I love just giving stuff away without permission. Smart Buds. Woo! I was going to give you a Nature Valley protein bar, but Smart Buds are better. The truth shall set you free. I believe that Gallup is truth. I believe that understanding your story is truth. And the smaller you get and the more you understand those truths, what does it say the truth does? Sets you free. Free to be me, right? So we have this alignment formula that we've created called love, service, and wealth. And as we've talked to people and we've talked to brands and organizations, we find a lot of times that they have two of the three in their life. So love, what do you love to do? What are you passionate about? What's your purpose in life? Service, how do you connect to serving others and the service you want to give? And wealth, what's your definition of wealth? And it doesn't have to be financial wealth, spiritual wealth, mental wealth, right? Physical wealth. A lot of times people are living two of the three. We've seen people that, kind of like the musician. He plays guitar all day long in his bedroom and he loves playing music. And someone discovers him and turns him into an international rock star. And he's thinking, I would have done this for free in my bedroom. But the fact now that I get paid to do it, it's kind of like serendipity, right? It's like this happy accident. He doesn't think a whole lot about the people it serves or how he serves. He just knows he makes a lot of money and he gets to do what he loves. There's other people that have something that they really love, and they love how it serves, and they really connect with how it serves, but it doesn't really fulfill their definition of wealth. How many of us in the room have done something we really love, and it served, and we couldn't make any money at it? A lot of people, that's usually, right? But that becomes somewhat of our identity. I love and I serve. And then sometimes we do have a connection to wealth and our service, and that provides us some security, but at the end of the day, we know we don't really love it. It doesn't really fulfill our passions, purpose, and principles. Our goal is to start to get people to help them see that you can have all three. That your love, your service, and your wealth don't have to be two different things or three different things, right? That you can live within alignment with those three things. Sometimes I love and hate the work-life balance discussion. Because to me, sometimes the work-life balance teaches you that you have your life and you love it, and then you turn your life off and you go to work. And you get out of work and you get your life back. It's like, that's terrible, right? I want to have my life through my work. I want to know that I love it and that I serve through it, right? One of the things that I can promise you, absolutely promise you, and bear testimony of, is that if you will serve other people and get more focused on serving others as you're seeking out your talents, you will better discover who you are. And I want you to think of some scriptural examples of people that found themselves as they served others. And that's just gospel truth. But I want you to think about that. How often am I serving others? The strengths movement is not to be meant as a comparative tool, but at the same time, I think it's impossible for us to ever really fully realize our talents and our strengths without other human beings. That's just the way our Heavenly Father created the plan. So as you serve others, you'll discover who you are. So tell your story. Those who tell the stories rule the world. Native American proverb. So they recently interviewed a lot of CMOs from some really big Fortune 500 companies, and 78% of these CMOs said the future of marketing is content. Stories. And 2/3 of those marketers said that branded content is going to be far superior to PR, email, advertising. There's a story movement happening. How many of you have heard or read or seen articles recently about telling your story, building your brand, right? It's everywhere. Stories raise prices. What does a plastic banana, a cracked horse's head, and a miniature jar of mayonnaise have in common? If you get this one right, I'm giving you this Blendtec, and I don't care what Spence says. So there's a lot of CEOs and executives of companies when we go in to talk to them and they say, oh yeah, okay, great, storytelling, brand, all that fluffy stuff, the strengths. Yeah, we can do that. And then we'll figure out how to really make money. That's all. You better take everything away. I'm just going to start frisbeeing stuff out in the audience. Again, I don't consider those very enlightened people or enlightened organizations. Those are the people that believe, no, we know that stories and building our strengths of our people and building our brand will help us be more profitable. Well, an organization that wanted to prove that stories raise prices and profits did this study. They went out and bought a plastic banana, cracked horse's head, and a miniature jar of mayonnaise at thrift stores. And then they hired professional writers to write stories that included those items. Didn't say it was a true story about the item. The story just contained the item. They coupled the story with the product, put it on eBay. Guess what the average ROI was from what they bought those at the thrift store to sold them for? 2,700%. It's not a typo. Then they went and did it like 10 more times to prove it and put it in a book and research paper. What changed? Story. Stories help us stories give us context of how we experience the world, right? Well, if stories can raise the prices of a product, can stories raise the prices of us and our personal brand and what we have to offer to employers? And absolutely. If I'm an employer and you come in and telling me an amazing story of who you are, your strengths, your brand, and what you have to offer as your personal brand, probably is going to raise your price in my mind. So there is an ROI. Not just financially, but like Spence said, physically, spiritually, emotionally, to understanding and telling your story. But you see, the difference is if you get small and you know your strengths, now when you go out and tell your story, what story are you really telling? Your authentic story. And let me just tell you that the world is starved right now for authenticity. The world is starved for real people and real stories. Your growth is found in your roots. Whenever we're consulting with an organization or a leader, if I can get them talking about their roots, where they came from, who they are, every time it opens the floodgates to creativity. Our growth is found in our roots. So many times we as people want to focus on what we're doing now and what we're doing and how we're doing it. So many companies are so focused on what they do and how they do it, they forgot about why they even started doing it in the first place. I had the opportunity last night to go to dinner with a man named Jerry Green who lives in Salt Lake City. He's from my hometown of Pima, Arizona, hometown of 2,000 people. My dad coached Jerry Green in high school. And my dad coached for 6 years. They won 6 state championships in high school basketball. And for 3 years, they went 75-0. They didn't lose a game for 3 years. They still hold the Class C national record this little tiny podunk town of Pima. The old gym now is named after my dad, the Stan Smith Gymnasium. It's pretty cool to take my boys back there. But Jerry played basketball for my dad, and he talked to me a lot about how my dad changed his life. And he talked a lot about roots and where he came from. President Eyring's father, Henry Eyring, grew up in Pima. That's one of our claim to fame. The University of Utah, who all the buildings are named after, Henry Eyring, he grew up in Pima. One time, when Jerry Green got recruited on a football scholarship out of Pima to come to the University of Utah, he walked into President Eyring's office, and said, Brother Eyring's office, and said, "Is Brother Eyring here?" And they said, "Yeah, but who are you? Do you have an appointment?" He said, "Well, I'm from Pima." And the secretary let him right in. And because Brother Eyring loved Pima. He loved this small town and the people that came from there. And he said that Brother Eyring immediately came up and embraced him, kissed him on the cheek, and he said, "Don't you ever forget where you came from. Don't you ever forget your story and who you are." And Jerry said those words have impacted him his entire life. As he keeps going back to his roots and thinking about who he is, it inspires him to do things in business. It inspires him with his story. Another time, they were having dinner with their in-laws, and President Kimball came in. Now, President Kimball grew up about 5 miles from Pima and Thatcher. So I don't want you to place judgments on the Gila Valley based on the guy up on stage. We were some really good people that come from that little area. Said they were at an event, and his sister-in-law runs up to President Kimball and said, "Hey, I know one of your family members." And she goes, "And that guy's from Pima." And President Kimball beelined through his security people, came up, embraced Jerry, kissed him on the cheek, exact same, and he said, "Don't you ever forget where you came from and the goodness of those people." Now, some people might say, "Well, I don't have an amazing story. I don't have this amazing childhood or this heritage of family history." I promise you, though, whether you've had struggles or challenges, your growth is found in your roots. Every amazing story contains a story of struggle, so focus and don't ever forget about your roots. Okay, here's some story formulas that we use these with all of our clients, and I want you to write them down. I want you to use these formulas as you start building your story. Roz Chast, a New York cartoonist, said every great story contains these 4 elements. Once upon a time, suddenly, luckily, happily ever after. We use this all the time with our clients. Our clients will come to us with all this messaging and all this data and all this information, and they don't know how to tell their story. And we just simply slowly start putting it into this formula. Once upon a time, your roots, who are you? People want to know that. Then they get familiar with the character of you, and they get interested enough to then find out, well, suddenly, what happened in your life? Then the luckily and the happily ever after. You guys have a story. When you go in and tell your story, when you're interviewing with companies, tell this story. Tell your once upon a time. Your suddenly, your luckily, your happily ever after. Now, there is a storyteller's dilemma. How many of you feel overwhelmed by the amount of information that is presented to us daily on the internet and social media? A study at the University of San Diego recently said that we download 34 gigabytes of data a day as people. That means my MacBook, coming from the factory with no upgraded memory, crashes in a week. How much data we take in. The more and more data we take in, the more and more people and employers start to realize, I don't know you, I don't trust you, I don't care. That's a dilemma all of us have when we're telling our story. You're not going to be the first person that's walked in and interviewed for your position. I'm not going to be the first person that's walked into this company to try and work with them with their brand and their culture and their story. And in their minds, they're thinking, I don't know you, I don't trust you, I don't care. So how do we overcome the storyteller's dilemma, and how can you overcome it? It's the storyteller's formula. My identity, my status, and my motives. Establish those things very quickly. Your identity, who are you? If I asked you guys right now, who am I? You would tell me. He's a 5th-generation native Arizona. He loves his family, right? He has this amazing story about his brand that came from his great-grandfather. My status, I'm a business owner that loves to help people with their brands. So your status, are you the student? Are you the teacher? Who are you and why you should care? And then your motives. What are your motives? I told you today at the beginning, my motive is to help you be free, to tell your story and build your brand, right? So many times when we're telling our story, we're talking all around the things that are most important. We're talking about what we think they want to hear. We're talking about what we can offer and how we can do it. And what people really want to know is, who are you? Do you believe the same as I believe? And can I trust you? And I'm telling you, these are the formulas we use with the biggest companies we work for and have incredible results. So I hope you'll use them. What about when everyone has a good story, right? If there's a story movement happening, well, everyone's going to walk in with a great story. So what differentiates stories? There is a power in how you do things. How you do things will either substantiate your story or expose it, right? So if you go to an interview and you're one of 20 people that go in for an interview, and at the end of the interview, they say, wow, a really impressive story. He really knows who he is. He really understands his strengths and what he has to offer, or she. But at the end, you're one of the only candidates that then sends them a handwritten thank you card. And you talk about them personally in the handwritten thank you card. You reference things about their family because you know that, because you've asked them about them, right? That separates you. How you do things makes your story stand out. It's not just telling a good story, it's also living it and how you do it. So where story meets brand, the campfire effect. So the campfire effect is something, a belief that we have that we want to try and help create in every organization. How many of you love campfires? What is it about campfires that are just magical that no one can explain? S'mores, yeah, s'mores is a part of it. Tinfoil dinners, Dutch oven cooking. I could go out in the middle of a forest with families camping all around and build this humongous campfire, and within a couple hours, everyone would be gathered around it. Campfires just draw people in. How many of you have ever stared into a campfire and just become self-reflective? Weirdest thing ever, right? Why? Just get in a trance and you start thinking about your life. When you're sitting around a campfire, do you ever have to think about what to say? I never sit around a campfire and say, I hope I don't say something dumb. It's just effortless, right? Well, you can create that campfire effect where people want to be around your campfire. They want to share your story and hear your story. But it has so much to do with your brand. Now, I want you to think of your brand as Joey Ryman said in the book Story of Purpose. Your brand is your stand. Your brand is what you stand for. So many people say, what is a brand? Well, there's the literal physical brand that we would use to put on the flesh of animals, a cattle brand. But you know what that brand represented for my great-grandfather? That brand wasn't just a sign of his product or service. That brand represented everything my grandfather stood for. Who he was as a family man, who he was as a businessman, who he was in the community. So your brand is what you stand for. So I want you to write down what you stand for. So we use this process in K-Cross. We discover, we align, then we serve. So we get really small and discover. We make sure and see how that aligns, and then we serve. If your strengths and who you are and what strengthens you align with your story and align with your brand, incredibly powerful. Last thing I want you to write down, the one thing you want to be known for. Every one of you is a brand. Every one of you as a person is a brand and has a story. This is the very first place we start in the discovery process with our clients is we ask them, what's the one thing you want to be known for? And that's painful to figure that out and try to write that. And you might not get it right the first time, but there's a power in really getting that small and saying, what do I want to be known for? And if this is what I want to be known for, then what do I have to do in my life to actually be known for that? How do I make sure that my story aligns with what I want to be known for? How do I make sure that my values and my strengths align with what I want to be known for? The greatest form of creativity, in my opinion, is authenticity. So many times in life, we're trying to be so creative with our stories and our brands and do really creative things, and we're missing the whole idea of creativity, in my opinion. The greatest form of authenticity is your creativity. Sorry. So there's one last slide, but first, we're going to do a little contest with K-Cross, okay? So here's the contest. If you'll go on our website, kcrossbrand.com, at the bottom of the page, you'll find a form that you can fill out. If you'll go on there and put your name, and in the subject line, I want you to put L2E contest. And if in the L2E contest, then in the form, what I want you to write is I want you to write how you've used these formulas to start telling your story. And then I want you to actually take a stab at it. And I want you to tell us your story. And we will go through and we'll pick the best story. And whoever we pick that has the best story, we'll help you create at no cost, we'll help you create a professional, personal brand. And I'll coach you for a month on your story. Okay? But you have to go on our website and you have to tell us your story. We have a really exciting project we're launching in about a month called WriteMyOwnStory.me. And it's just going to be a platform that we give to the community for people to come on and have all the tools to tell their story. Okay? So in closing, this is my last slide. This slide contains everything that you need to know. If I could sum everything up in one slide about what you need to know to tell your story and build your brand, so I want you to take notes on this next slide. You ready? The power is that the slide is blank. You're the author. You get to write the story. You get to decide what your strengths are and what your brand is. It's the greatest thing I can tell you about storytelling. Now, there was a little bit of a freeing process with Tommy Franklin, right? As he went out and danced, he kind of became known and started to understand better who he was, and it helped him be free to be me. So I want to ask you guys, are you going to be free to go out and tell your story? Are you going to be free to the point where you don't have fear? You're not afraid to tell your story, and you're not afraid to tell people what you stand for. And to tell your story and build your brand in such a way that it inspires people. People want to come and get around your campfire, right? People feel the effect of your campfire. And I can promise you, similar to what Paul did, as you do that, and I love what he said, as you become grounded to your Heavenly Father and to your strengths, and as you serve others, you truly will understand your strengths, and you'll start to really begin to understand what most strengthens you, and the best way to tell you that story. I hope you'll reach out to us. I hope you'll connect with us. I hope you'll take these formulas, and I hope you'll take all of this information today. And I hope you have a desire and a commitment and discipline to get really small, right? So, the last little exercise that I want to participate in is it worked for Tommy Franklin, right, to dance. And that dancing process was really a freeing process for Tommy. So I'm going to ask our amazing audio-visual people to crank up the music a little bit. And I'm going to come out here and join you in the audience. And I want to get everybody up on their feet. And we're going to dance for 2 minutes. We're going to get this place rocking. Okay? So everyone get up. This is the first step to the freeing process. Okay? Now, as the music starts to build and as we start cranking up the music, I want to see your best moves, okay? Let's get everyone, when it starts, we're going to get everyone clapping, and then we're just going to break into it. Come on, come on.
Move so fast that I can't keep up. I'm chasing, I'm in love with shooting stuff. But she moves so fast, when she falls then I'll be waiting. Give her love to shooting stuff. But she moves so fast that I can't keep up. I'm chasing, I'm in love with shooting stuff. But she moves so fast, when she falls then I'll be waiting. Give her love to shooting stuff. She moves so fast that I can't keep up. I'm chasing, I'm in love with shooting stuff. Yeah, she moves so fast, when she falls then I'll be waiting.
Alright, everyone clap it out, clap it out. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Thanks, guys. Now I'm just going to give all this away. Thank you guys so much.
Is this thing on? Oh, my goodness. L2E 2014 is on. Oh, my goodness. So,